More investment and revenue. For-profit AI labs are dominating the headlines. In today's episode, we'll talk about how AI innovation helps nonprofits pursue their mission. So let's jump right in. Welcome to What's the Buzz, where leaders share how they have turned hype into outcome. Today, we'll talk about how AI innovation helps nonprofits pursue their mission. And who better to talk about it than someone who's actively working on that? Scott Rosenkrans. Hey, Scott, thank you so much for joining.
Hey, Andreas, thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Hey, wonderful. Why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what you do?
Yeah, wonderful. Sounds great. I'm Scott Rosenkrans. I'm VP of AI Innovation at DonorSearch. I've been in the nonprofit sector my entire career. I actually went to grad school to be a therapist to help people solve problems and realized in about 6 to 9 months that I was going to burn out too quickly and found myself in the nonprofit sector. So I've been in there for 15 years now, working with nonprofits, both in a nonprofit doing a lot of charitable fundraising, working behind the scenes on identifying who we should be asking for gifts and so on, and then also working as a consultant to help nonprofits do more with the limited resources that they have. But for the past 8 years I've been prioritizing and focused on predictive machine learning models, so building custom machine learning models for nonprofits to predict who's likely to make a gift in the next 12 months, who's likely to make their first gift, and help organizations really utilize again those limited resources. They're usually working over budget. They have limited staff, people wearing a lot of hats. So been helping them just make the most out of what they have, and then also doing a lot of consulting about how to adopt AI. We know that a lot of work you talk about too. Just because they have tools doesn't mean that they're seeing the success with it. So how do we get them to just kind of move a little bit further in their AI journey?
Wonderful. And I remember we met in Phoenix at Machine Learning Week a couple of weeks ago,
Uh-huh.
and said we should definitely record an episode together. But you also mentioned that you're working on a book, right? Or you actually have a book out, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
we have a book out, Nonprofit AI. It came out about 2 months ago. Comprehensive guide to implementing artificial intelligence for social good. So my colleague and I, my friend, my mentor, Nathan Chappelle, we've been in this space together for the past 8 years, worked with hundreds of nonprofits, and only a few of them have really seen the success that we would expect them to see with these predictive models. And then it even expanded, as you would expect, with generative AI, right? Everybody wants to jump on the bandwagon. They hear about how the ROI is limitless, right? And it's just such an easy thing to adopt, but nobody's really seeing that come out. So this book is really to help anyone in the nonprofit space move a little bit further along, identifying the challenges that are getting in the way, whether they're cultural, technical. Spoiler alert, they're usually cultural, right? And then giving you some examples of how to actually implement, whether it's predictive, generative, or automation. And then once you know and you're seeing success, kind of go back to the book, read a little bit to how to get further along the journey, and then see what's coming down the pike. And AI is constantly evolving, new technologies are coming out. So this isn't a read it once and you're done. It's a guide to help you along the way.
Fantastic. That sounds great. And by the way, overall, I love the mission of helping others help others as well that you shared as working with nonprofits. So, like I said, super excited to have you on.
Yeah.
Now, folks, for those of you in the audience, if you're just joining the stream, drop a comment in the chat where you're joining us from. I'm always curious to see how global our audience is. And also don't forget to pick up your copy of the AI Leadership Handbook so you can learn how to turn technology hype into business outcomes. And I know Scott has his copy as well.
Yep. Sitting on my bookshelf. Yeah.
Perfect. So now, Scott, with that out of the way, should we play a little game to kick things off? Good old fashioned. So this game, when I hit the buzzer, you'll see a sentence. And I'd like for you to answer with the first thing that comes to mind and why in your own words. And to make it a little more interesting, you'll only have 60 seconds for your answer.
Okay.
So for those of you watching us live, please drop your answer in the chat and why as well. So Scott, are you ready for What's the Buzz? Yes.
As ready as I'll ever be.
Yes. All right. So here we go. If AI were a vehicle, what would it be?
Vehicle.
60
Okay.
seconds on the clock. Go.
First thing, this I'm not sure if this answer applies, but we're gonna go with it anyway. I'm gonna say a transformer.
Hmm.
Right? It could be a lot of things all at once. It's kind of whatever it needs to be in the moment, whether it's a semi or a bot, whatever it is. It's there to get you a little bit further and help you along, and can change and evolve and adapt to the surrounding circumstances. Yeah,
Perfect. Sounds like a optimal prime answer.
like that.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for doing this on the fly. I really enjoy seeing how my different guests answer these questions and what comes to mind.
Yeah,
There's really great analogies.
yeah,
But we're here to talk more about nonprofits, and so one of the first questions that comes to mind for me is I've spent 25 years working in corporate and for-profit. A lot of time on AI projects, AI programs, strategy, enablement, and so on. But I'm wondering, what does it actually look like when you work for a nonprofit? How is it different in that environment from traditional corporate for-profit?
yeah. The most obvious thing is that our goals are not profit based, right? It's not just increasing revenue, having better, more returns for stakeholders and shareholders and so on. It's doing good. It's completing your mission. The goal of most nonprofits is to put themselves out of business because they've solved the
Yeah.
problem, right? And so as a result, when I as a consumer give money to a for-profit company, I get something in return, right? I get an iPad, an iPhone, I get, I access to a social media platform, whatever it is. I get something in return to evaluate whether I thought my investment was worth it, right? For a nonprofit, all we get to give in return is trust. If you give money to a nonprofit, you are trusting that that nonprofit is doing what they said they would do with it
Mhm.
and doing it efficiently, right? Trust is very easy to break. And so there's a classic example of a nonprofit that, like many others, was under resourced. And so they got rid of this was for an eating disorder, national eating disorder nonprofit. They got rid of their call center and replaced it with an AI chatbot, right? To save resources and see all the, impact that AI has and so on. And within 3 or 4 days, that chatbot was giving harmful advice. Advice that would be fine for everyone else, but the audience, in terms of, if you want to lose weight, just check the scale or eat less calories. It's not helpful advice. It's not beneficial for
Yeah.
those suffering from an eating disorder, right? And so that model may have passed ethical guidelines, responsible guidelines, but it wasn't beneficial, right? And as a result, that nonprofit likely suffered in terms of their fundraising performance, and other nonprofits similar to them probably also suffered, right? If I'm reading that in a newspaper, I might not pay attention to who it is, but I know it's
Yeah.
a nonprofit. And then even more so in today's political climate, there's a lot of information coming out about how nonprofits have been, misusing funds in certain circumstances, right? Or a lot of allegations along those lines. So there's a lot of mistrust there. And so we need to make sure that what we're doing with nonprofits, with artificial intelligence, that we're always putting trust first and relationships first. And we're not just going for what's a quick win and what will prioritize transactions over relationships. So another thing is nonprofits are very overburdened. There's a study that came out recently in our space that 75% of nonprofit employees are looking to leave their job in the next 12 months. 60% of them are considering not coming back to the nonprofit sector overall. And the overwhelming majority, by 60%, is they're overworked and under resourced, right? And then again, you have AI that says it'll give you 98% of your time back, right? It's $20 a month, like all these things, but it's just not connecting. And so sometimes people just kind of jump in that AI pool without thinking, well, how should we be employing this? How should we be using this? And not just like, oh, here's a cool use case. Let's try it and see what happens, and we'll figure out the rest afterwards.
I think that's the first super important distinction that you're making, right? It's about what's the mission? How do we bring good to the cause that we're advocating for, that we're trying to solve? And it's interesting to hear how that changes how you approach innovation, how you approach things like AI, and what really needs to be at the forefront. Um,
Yeah, and we've been working my a lot of colleagues and I have been working on this program called Fundraising AI, right? We know that there's no governmental regulation on AI, right? There's the NIST framework. EU has the EU AI Act, but in the US, we don't really have any specific guidelines or frameworks on how to employ this. So we built Fundraising AI, which is the first of its kind. It's a responsible and beneficial framework for nonprofit artificial intelligence and gives those organizations governance template, a tool to say this is how we should be looking at it, we should be using it, and how we should be evaluating it, right? Constantly being adapted and evolved as technology moves on, so that we're providing that resource and saying you can't just go with what Microsoft says is responsible or Meta is responsible, right? We need to build this for our own and have our own construction around it.
Now, earlier you mentioned, it's not just about quick wins and showing some value, but it's ensuring that you do that right, that you do it in the right spaces, that you connect it deeply to the nonprofit's mission. So I'm curious, what does AI innovation look like in this space, and how do you even prioritize what to pursue when especially you need to check it for additional dimensions?
Yeah, a great question. So there's a lot of that just because we should, or just because we
Yeah.
can, should we? Right? Chatbots are coming out. Virtual assistants are coming out. There's all these technologies and all these use cases in the for-profit world that we see. You turn on your TV and there's 40 new applications of artificial intelligence, right? Like you can't separate yourself from it. So an example that's coming out more recently in the nonprofit sector is an autonomous fundraiser, right? Fundraising should be about human to human relationships, right? It should be that I'm seeing you as a potential supporter of our organization. I'm trying to find out what makes you tick. How would you want to support this? And how can we establish a strong relationship between the two of us to further this mission and help you feel like you're expressing your generosity in a positive way, right? If I say, you know what, I'm not going to do that, and I'm just going to replace myself in this with an autonomous bot that can work all the time and knows exactly what to say, and also is manipulative by nature and is more successful at being manipulative and has to be goal oriented, and that goal is raising dollars. Like, I'm not treating you as an individual that I want to establish a relationship with, right? I'm not putting trust in this relationship between us. And I'm in some senses misrepresenting the organization because I'm saying what matters more is
Mhm.
transactions and getting dollars in the door than an actual human to human
Yeah.
in relationship. So where we say AI should be used is more informational, right? Use it to save time on those things that you don't want to do, that are menial tasks, that are manual tasks, like putting together a report, right? Or processing a gift. But when it comes to relational, that's where AI should stay off to the side, right? Keep that for the humans to continue on and do what we do
I
best.
think there's this debate on the corporate and on the for-profit side. What does AI do? What do people do? To me, the way that you are articulated
Yeah.
that just now makes it very, very clear, right? It's a relationship-based, it's a people-based business in that sense, or a relationship. So we need to have this transaction between people, or not even the transaction, but the relationship between people, and AI can support us on everything else that we do to run our nonprofit.
Exactly. And the nonprofit sector is again, like I mentioned, kind of under attack, but it's also been on a downward trend for a long time, right? 20 years ago, two-thirds of people, if you ask them, they said that they're making gifts to nonprofits. Now it's less than half, right? And if this trend continues in 40, 50 years, there's going to be no individuals giving to nonprofits, right? The problem is there's a lot of problems, but part of the problem is that we've been using the wrong tools to identify who we're going to ask. We prioritize wealth over relationships, we prioritize transactions over relationships. And so if you throw in AI to a broken system, it's just going to make that broken system more broken and faster, right? It's not going to make it stronger and it's not going to fix it. So you need to reevaluate what do we want to prioritize and how do we use the AI to do that, as opposed to just come in and do things quicker and move us faster towards that brick wall that we're already going to hit.
Again, I see so many parallels here. On the for-profit side, we talk about don't just automate a process. First of all, look at first, do you need it? Do you need all the steps? Can you make it leaner? and then once it's optimized,
Yeah.
automated. So some of that is what I'm hearing from you as well, in the nonprofit space. So it doesn't just help to throw more technology at it. It might just give you worse outcomes faster. So,
Exactly. Exactly. Nobody wants
no,
worse outcomes
no,
faster.
please no. Um, you know, um, but then I'm curious on, you know, in in the organization that you work for at DonorSearch, what are some of the organizational capabilities to even bring new AI features, models, and initiatives to market? What are the skills? What does the culture look like? What does the data infrastructure look like to bring AI for nonprofits out in the world? How does it change?
Yeah. Again, that's something that's always changing, right? It's not like the internet. The internet came out, however many years ago, and people are like, "Well, what is this thing?" But then once you learn it, you kind of learn it, right? Like it doesn't change all that much. Maybe there's new, like
Mhm.
social media is a new thing, but it's still based on the internet, right? Electricity hasn't changed much since it's came out. So it's not like it's you learn it and then you're done and you're caught up. You never have to think about it again. AI is constantly evolving, and AI is now building new forms of AI, right? Like it's this exponential technology that we've never really seen before. So you always have to stay up to date and always be treat it as like an iterative process, right? Not just in terms of like the tech, but also the culture. We know that a number that we keep hearing is that 70% of successful AI adoption, for profit, nonprofit, doesn't matter, is based on culture, not data or models, right? So it doesn't matter what tool you have if your organization is not set up in a way to really change their processes. And this is one thing we talk about often, like predictive AI, which is again where we spend most of our time, and what we do at Donor Search, is it makes the decisions for you, right? And so a lot of people have valued themselves as being able to make decisions with a lot of information. But if you don't have to do that anymore, where do you put
Mhm.
your value? Right? And so people wanna hold on to that and kinda keep AI, like, at arm's length because it's threatening to their own, view of self, right? But instead, if you say, "Okay, well, now if someone else is making decisions for me, I get to free up my time to do other things that I can do better," right? And leverage other skill sets that I haven't been able to flex as much because I've spent so much of my time making decisions in this sea of data, right? And oftentimes decisions were wrong anyway, right? Or at least wrong to the extent that they could be now with artificial intelligence. And so it's constantly going back to say, how can we treat this as an iterative process? How can we focus on sometimes not focus on the outcome, but the process itself to see how we can make those tweaks like you're talking about, right? Oh, wait, there's new ways to do things. There's new technologies that you can apply. Um, in terms of what we're producing here, we have again these predictive models, custom for each organization because we know no two organizations are alike. But now knowing that generative and agentic are coming into play as well, how do we combine the two? We see most organizations really move the needle when they're using predictive AI, right? Generative is incredibly valuable and efficient, but it's not going to turn a $1 million organization to a $1 billion organization, right? Apple, Amazon, Netflix, they're not billion trillion-dollar companies because of generative AI. They're there because of
Mhm.
predictive AI, right? Generative just allows you to speak more individually to each person and so on, and treat them as an N of one as opposed to a cohort of individuals. So like combining the two so that nonprofits can really dig in and hone their human skill sets, right, and offload anything that could be
Mhm.
offloaded elsewhere to
Mhm.
something that's more efficient in doing so.
That sounds great. You know, the part especially around how you do that in a nonprofit. I think many parallels. Again, you still need the data, you still need the skills and the resources. It's
Yep.
interesting to hear you talk more about predictive analytics or predictive AI, but I'm assuming if you work with numbers and you want to make predictions about how do people likely behave and what are the dollar amounts, um, that they might be likely to donate and to gift and give. Gen AI really doesn't help as much, right? It's not the computation. It's maybe the email or the report or something around it that articulates when or puts these numbers in context.
Yeah, it's funny. Again, we've been building these models for 8 years now, right? So before November 2022, right? When ChatGPT came out. And at that time, we used to have to, in our sales pitch, we would have to say, AI is not this scary, like science fiction thing. You're
Mhm.
already using it, right? When you use Google Maps or
Yes.
Apple or Netflix or Amazon, you're using it. So it's here already. It's just now we can use it for our own purposes, right? November 2022 came around, and now we say, no, no, no. AI is not
Yeah.
just ChatGPT. Like there's two different things. There's generative predictive. And so like everyone now thinks that they have a different concept and a grasp on what this thing is, but it muddies the water
Yes.
even more because they are two very distinct tools with two very distinct outcomes
Mhm.
and purposes. And it's about knowing what's important for what. And so that was a big part of when we wrote nonprofit AI because you see a lot of, if you were to Google how do nonprofits use AI, 99 times out of 100, it's going to be a blog that has no real examples and it's saying a list of generative AI, use cases, but not an organization
Yes.
that's actually done it, right? So we wanted to put emphasis on
Mhm.
predictive, but also not forget that
Yes.
generative exists. And then also automation, right? Automation plays a big part with AI and leveraging that type of technology. So kind of make it more holistic and more of a broader view on all the different capabilities that it can do, right? And not just hone in on this is the end all be all. It's ChatGPT, and that's all you need to know.
So how do you then in this environment measure the impact and for whom when it's not or it's maybe not right customer tickets solved or call volume reduced or something else? What's the impact that you measure and for whom?
Yeah, yeah. So most of my work in nonprofit space is more on the fundraising side, right? The charitable giving. So how do we identify the people to make the gifts, right? And obviously, a very clear metric would be
Yeah.
dollars raised. But my friend often quotes Charlie Munger: "Show me the outcome and I'll show you the incentive, or show me the
Yes.
incentive and I'll show you the outcome," right? If you're prioritizing dollars raised, then you're just going to look to try to
Yeah.
find dollars, right? And you're going to speed over any hurdles, speed over any relationships to really get there. So a lot of what we're trying to do, not a result of AI, but in conjunction with
Mhm.
employing AI, is to change the metrics that are being prioritized from again transactions
Yes.
to relationships. So instead of looking at how much did you raise this year, what's your 3-year rolling average,
Mhm.
right? So that way you could see if it's increasing and you could prioritize kind of more long-term relationships, more sustainable
Yeah.
relationships. What's your retention rate, right? What's your acquisition rate? So bringing new people in, but then keeping them along, right, is going to be is going to help nonprofits
Mhm.
stay stronger and be able to commit to their mission better than just saying I raised X this year and now I'm going to try to raise X more because that's you're either going back to the same
Mhm.
wealthy people and then they get tired of giving to you, or you're not looking to bring in someone that's maybe a smaller level now but could grow to be a stronger donor because that's not what your incentive is, right? Your incentive is just
Yes.
dollars now.
So it's almost like a customer lifetime value. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. So that's another model that we build kind
Mhm.
of long term. RFM is a pretty traditional model, right? Recency, frequency, monetary, but it keeps bringing the same names in terms of a
Yes.
fundraising perspective. It keeps bringing the same names over,
Right.
over and over again, right? So you keep going back to the same people. So we put that into kind of an AI environment to say who's most likely to be at the
Mhm.
higher end, just hasn't given enough runway to get there yet. And so it helps people prioritize those that are flying under the radar, that are a little bit newer in their relationship, but showing up really strong and wouldn't be prioritized in other methods with RFM or anything like that. So we're helping to kind of lead the way with that customer value, right? Customer lifetime value, and get there through the technology that we can offer.
Awesome. That sounds really great, and I think puts the technologies, the models, the kind of techniques that you can apply in a really good context to show how that is connected and again drives the outcomes that you actually want to achieve. Now,
Mhm.
Scott, we're getting close to the end of the show, and I was wondering if you can summarize the key three takeaways for our audience today.
Yeah. Key three takeaways. Nonprofits prioritize trust. They're built on trust. And so if trust is our currency, we need to go in with a different approach to how we're treating AI, especially again in terms of what's responsible, what's beneficial, than those that are presented in the for-profit space. That would be one. Two is to prioritize relationships over transactions, right? So whenever you're using AI, how can you do it in a way that keeps the human in the center, right? And isn't just saying, how do we get more money quicker? And then three is just because we can doesn't mean that we should, right? So identifying those ways that you want to grow and want to build a program that's sustainable, right? And again, isn't heading towards this brick wall just on a faster moving train, right? But something that allows you to get over the hurdles of what we refer to as the generosity crisis, and move in a way that changes that trajectory of decreasing dollars, decreasing donors year after year, and helps you establish relationships with people who want to maintain and watch you grow.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for painting this broad picture for us, what doing AI in a nonprofit looks like and doing it for nonprofits looks like. I certainly learned a lot. I think there are a lot of parallels that I could see between corporate, for-profit, and nonprofit, how you apply them, but how you apply them in the context of this particular domain. And especially that part about fostering the human relationships and putting emphasis on them when technology seems to make everything go faster and cheaper and more efficiently. It's actually still the human-to-human relationship that matters at the end of the day. And I love coming back to that theme.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Andreas. I really appreciate the time, and it was great speaking with you and talking to you and your community. I love what
Thank
you
you so
built
much.
here.
All right, folks in the audience, see you next time for another episode of What's the Buzz. Bye-bye.